Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Palantir takes another top spot in the latest AI, data science, and machine learning market study from Dresner, but also recently posted an announcement on open source government web sources in a blog post that I'd break down here. So everyone is excited with Palantir's technical ranking as #1 for this report. So it's not misleading per se, but there are a couple details to note down when it comes to be ranked 1. Now, it's just among more reputational buildup for the company, so as Palantir puts onto their website, they made sure to highlight they are recognized as a top performer in the market study. They are among the top rated vendors with the highest scores in analytical features and functions, model operations, and usability. Note these categories as there are others. And a quote from Palantir is just making sure everyone knows this is because of Palantir's artificial intelligence platform, or AIP, and that hundreds of enterprises are using AIP today in production. So it's not just testing, but actual work. Now, going to the study itself, I won't bore you with the details, but they establish who Dresner is, the people, the reasoning, the methodology, but the actual reference to Palantir falls to one slide. So at the top, you see Palantir is ranked #1 alongside 3 others. So I'm not too familiar with these or other competitors, so I'll save that for another day, but I think to highlight, look at the visual. Palantir slightly beats out the other big names like Google right next to them, Microsoft, Alteryx, and others, but it gives an idea how Dresner sees Palantir. They've got a strong analytical features and functions, I mentioned, model operations and usability, which was highlighted in the PR, but looks to be lacking in neural networks, data access, and open source support, at least from what I can see as their bottom 3 metrics on the visual. So remember, this is an independent study, and other studies may or may not agree with these rankings, but as I said, this can be another marketing point to help steer customers towards Palantir over time if this becomes a regular thing. Now, a lot of you also saw my community post yesterday highlighting Palantir's blog post for open source for Palantir government web service. So this announcement definitely went over most investors' heads for good reason, honestly, but I think it's important to note these are meant to continue bring transparency to the organization and how certain tooling works and is publicly available and shared. So high level, and if you're an investor, this is pretty much all you need to know. They want to make sure people know they have over 220 open source Git repos and provide the link to look through those who are interested. So I may take some time later to go through this, but some may have been touched very recently, as you can see, while others may have not been touched since like 2022 or 2021, so it really just depends on the repo. But the other main point is to cover policy bot and at a high level. So it's an automated review processes for pull requests. For those who don't work in Git, it's just to make sure approvals are easier to let your new code in, but taking into account the caveat that there may be different requirements for that actual approval process. Now, the reason they want to highlight this is because the government, there's rigid approval processes, and every time you add a person to a process, it can slow things down by days. So this policy bot is in line with the government's development, security, and operations best practices, as well as the change management processes to comply with FedRAMP, IL5, and IL6. Now, they get a little into the weeds here if you go further, but they use these change controls of CM3, CM31, and SA10. So for the sake of this video, I won't be going to each of one, but feel free to pause on the screens here to see what they're doing or follow the links. Now, like when they talk about the technical details as well, it's as simple as making sure different development teams have an automated version of their workflow. And this framework of PolicyBot is important to be flexible. So with these 4 examples, they want the flexibility to treat certain branches differently, with some not even requiring review, while others may need additional approval from an actual team or separate team. Or the other type of change that are like pre-approved or documentation, those don't even need to be reviewed, but then there's some level of review for peer level changes. So there's just little caveats here between each different scenario. So integrating with GitHub here, PolicyBot gives that flexibility and automation with just adding a YAML file in normal language to set the review criteria. But if that's not straightforward enough, you can also just look at the GUI, putting it into boxes here and making it very simple and clean to look at. And that's pretty much it. Nothing groundbreaking here. I'm not going to say this changes the world, but it's very straightforward but powerful if implemented for certain organizations that may not have an easy time trying to get these approvals through here. Now, the reason they wanted to show this is that everyone doesn't have to make this complicated. Little things like this, like from my own experience, most companies just take their Git processes, put a blanket review process, and say so-and-so needs to review these kind of tickets or pull requests. But in reality, Palantir just wants to make it easier and more transparent here in what is available to everyone, and for any government compliant org to move these tickets along here easily. So honestly, not game changing, but everyone gets a good sense of transparency here and what's happening.